Hi friends, Sharon from Mad Paper Crush here. Today we're going to be making a challenge journal. So this is a journal that I'm going to be using for a monthly challenge that's coming up. It has a snap closure. It has 2 signatures and about a 3/4 of an inch spine. And I'm just going to walk you through how I made it so that it's all ready to go. So there's a little snap closure here, and then I have all my pages on the inside ready to go for my challenge. So I hope you'll join me. We'll be using this 9x12 envelope, some cardboard that I had just laying around, and we'll also be using this painter's paper to make the cover. So here we go. Let's get started. Okay, let's go ahead and start to make the cover for my challenge journal. I'm going to use this painter's paper. I got it at a home improvement store. It was really inexpensive, but I like that it's nice and lightweight. It can be used for a lot of different things. So what I'm going to do is take a piece that will approximately cover my envelope, so bigger than the envelope there, and I am going to sprinkle it up. So give it a good crinkle, and then of course straighten it back out gently so you don't tear it. And you can see it has all these wonderful wrinkles in it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some distress inks. I've just picked out some here and a distress oxide. So I have Wild Honey and Frayed Burlap, Walnut Stain, and Vintage Photo. And I'm just going to be using these, just rubbing them all over to really bring out all the wrinkles. And I'm sure it'll have kind of a leather look when we get done. So there's not going to be any science to what I'm doing. I'm just going to rub it on, and this one is a little bit dry, but that's okay. It'll still add some dimension. Layers are good, no matter what the layers are. What is this? This is the Frayed Burlap. Now you can really see those wrinkles starting to come out. And I'm going close to the edge, but it'll be folded over, so I don't need to worry about going all the way to the edge. I'm going to try this Wild Honey now. Ooh, I like that. The Wild Honey really gives it a kind of a aged leather color to it, I think. Whoa. Yeah, I like that. And you can do this as much as you like. I'm moving on to the Vintage Photo now to get, the look that you want. And I'm going to keep going here a little bit. I really like how it's starting to look. I think I'm going to put some more Wild Honey on and see if I can kind of concentrate it to certain areas to really give it kind of a weathered, used look here and there. And so I'm pressing a little harder in some places. Maybe in the corners. Okay. Really like how that's coming together. I think that'll look nice as a cover. Okay, so I'm going to put those away, and I'm going to set this aside now to dry before we do anything more with it, so that I don't get my hands more covered with all kinds of wet inks and paints and everything like that. So go ahead and put this aside. We'll start on the next part. Okay, so now we're going to start working on the spine. So I'm just using a piece of cardboard that I had, and I'm going to measure, this is 9 inches tall, which matches the size of my cover here on my envelope. And I want my cover, or I'm sorry, I want my spine to be about 3/4 of an inch wide. But because I'm going to be adding paper and scoring around it, I'm just going to take it back maybe just a 1/16 of an inch less than 3/4 of an inch to make this cut. So my spine then is 9 inches high and 1/16 of an inch less than 3/4 of an inch, if that makes sense. So because the next thing I'm going to do is make the scores in my envelope so that, you know, we have sides that come around this spine piece. So my scores are going to be at 5 and I believe it's 6 to 8, 5 and 5/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. And then 6 and 3/8. So we're going to be putting this in the middle, but I'm going to go ahead and make the scores on my envelope. So I'm lining it up here as best I can, and then I'm going to do 5 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/8. And then I'm going to do another score mark at 6 and 3/8, and that'll give me my 3/4 of an inch spine allotment there, so that it'll fold around. So you can kind of see how the scores go around the spine. They'll be on each side of the spine. Okay, so then the next thing we want to do is we want to cover our spine piece because we don't want that showing. So I'm just going to take a piece of let's see, I picked out a bunch of different things here, so I think this will be nice. And I'm going to use this cardstock as my front and back covers on the inside. So I think that'll, actually maybe I'll do it kind of with the papers in the middle. I kind of like that as my spine cover piece. So, and this is just regular scrapbook paper. It's not cardstock, just to make it easier to wrap around my paper. So I'm just going to cut a strip off just about at where this wording is, lettering, and then I'm just going to make some marks about where I want to cut to cover this. And there's, you know, I'm sure a ton of different ways to, did I do it on the right side? Yes, I did. To cover things like this, but this is my little way. So I'm going to start up at about 9 inches there. I guess I need to put it this way. And oops, didn't quite cut that out. There we go. So now I have my piece of paper that I can use to cover this with. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to glue it down, and then I'll do some cutting around it to make it a little bit easier to fold over. So I'm just using some tacky glue here, since this will be on the inside and covered. I'm just going to go ahead and use this. This is good for paper kind of glue, and I always leave it on its side so that if I want to use it again, it doesn't all sink down to the bottom. It doesn't take as long for it to come back up to the top. And I'm just centering this, eyeball centering this here. And it'll take a little bit for this to dry, but while that's drying, I'm just going to cut my corner pieces out. So I'm going to start at the first corner and cut an angle into the corner, and I'm going to leave about the thickness of the cardboard, and then I'm going to cut off the other corner. So that's kind of how I'm going to cut each 4 corners. I'm just going to cut into the corner, leave a little bit of space for the thickness of the cardboard, and then cut the other corner out. And that one I didn't quite angle it right, but I think we'll be okay. All right, so now I have my piece ready to be covered. And I'm going to start with the sides, or I'm sorry, the small sides first, the thin sides first. And I'm just going to make sure I've got some tacky glue right up against the cardboard so that I'll get a nice coverage there. and then up to the side of the piece. Whoa. And then I'll just fold these over. I think I put way too much glue on there. And then I'll do the sides. And I'll try not to put as much glue this time. But I do want to be sure I have a nice piece of glue right along the edge of the cardboard for coverage. Then we'll fold those sides in. Securing those the best we can. And now we have a nice seam piece here that will go well on our cover. So this is going to go right here like this. Okay, I think this is nice and dry, and we can go ahead and cover our envelope. And what I'm going to do first is actually fold the score lines so that I know right where they are, because I'm going to need to make those scores in the cover again, or at least be able to fold them when after we cover it with our paper. So I'm just kind of making sure that we're good to go. And I'm not gonna use this as a pocket, although you could. That would be something fine to do. So, but I'm gonna glue it shut. So I'm just gonna take some glue stick here and this will be covered by our paper too, so it doesn't have to be exact. Okay, so we have our folds in, and now we can cover our envelope with our paper. So I'm going to use my tacky glue again, but instead of just rubbing it on, I am going to dilute it a little bit so that we can brush it on. Okay, so I just took a little bit of glue and a little bit of water just to make this kind of spreadable, and I didn't need too much. And I'm just going to really brush this on. And actually, I think I'm going to put down some deli paper here so that I don't get it all over my mat when I get to the edges. But I want pretty good coverage so that my paper will stick down. Move my deli paper first. See, it's already sticking. All right, and then I'm just going to lay this down. Actually, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this over so that I can see where I'm putting this in the middle. You know what I'm saying? So I think I'm going to go like this and then kind of be able to center it before I stick it down here. And probably when this dries, I may even add some more ink to it because I like the way it's looking so far. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and cut out the corners again, just like we did for the spine. Okay, and I think I'm just going to do this again. Since I have a little left, I might need to add a little water to it. And stir it around a little. I think that'll work good. And then I'm just gonna add some to the edge. And if I come in a little bit, then my top edge of the paper will get glued. So once again, we're kind of winging it here. I don't know if that's how you craft, but often that's how I craft. I like to wing it. Okay. And probably should have started with the sides, but, and all of this will be covered too with more paper. So again, it doesn't have to be exact. So I am just going to put a little bit, since this side really didn't get any glue. Yeah, I'm going to put a little in there. Make sure it's down. Okay. Same with this side. Looks like all my corners might need a little bit of glue here. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to set this aside because I definitely want it to dry real good before we do anything else to it. And then I am going to make sure I rinse out and clean out, clean off my paintbrush so that I can use it again. So I'll be right back. So this is nice and dry now, and we can continue to work on it. I have decided that the closure that I'd like to do for this journal is a snap closure. So what I'm going to do is I thought this paper might complement this nicely, which I like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this in half. So this is a 12 by 12 sheet of paper, and I'm going to just cut it in half to do what I need to do here. So I'm going to put one side aside for now. I'll probably use it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I've cut 2 more pieces of that chipboard from a box that I had. One is 2 inches wide and one is 3/4 of an inch wide. So basically the same as the spine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover them. Now let me make sure I have the right side going the right side. So I'm going to put one here, and then the other one I'm going to put with like maybe an 1/8 of an inch gap in between. So this is how I'm going to cover it. I'm not going to trim this down though, because I'm going to use this side to keep it in the book. So you'll see what I mean in just a second. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to use my Beacon 3-in-1 glue. And actually maybe what I'll do is I'm going to mark these too so I know where everything needs to be. So I'm just going to make a couple little pencil marks so I can line it up when I put them down. I just wanted to give those a minute to dry, and I'm going to cut our corners once again, except for this one. I think I'm only going to be cutting these 2. I'm not going to do around all 4 because I'm only covering 3 sides here, basically. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with my sides. And I'm going to gonna take my, actually I think I'm gonna use my ruler. Just try to get, I have a little tear, but that's okay. Do the same thing over here. Okay, and then cover this side. Okay, and so you can see I still have this side left long. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this other piece and we're going to cut it down a little just to cover the other side so it's all covered. But I want to make sure I leave this side long. And the reason I'm doing that is so when we put our cover together with this, I'm going to glue this underneath our back paper. And then when it closes, of course I can't quite do it right now, it'll close with this on top. And that'll be my, and then I'll be able to put my snap right there. So that's my idea so far here. So I am just gonna fold this so I know where it is. I'm just not gonna glue it down yet. Okay, and then this one I need to trim down. I'm just gonna make a little mark so I can see where I want it to be trimmed to. There and about there. Okay, so I'm just going to put this down just like that. See if I can find my bends. Okay, and then I'm going to just trim off a little bit of the corners here so that it doesn't stick out the top of my book. Just like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to glue this in here. It might be easier to do it like that. Make sure that's lined up. Okay, looking pretty good. Now the next thing I want to do is I am going to set my snap in here, because I want to have the snap set on this one underneath. And actually I probably should have done it on that one too, but that's okay. Okay, let's move on to the spine. I'm going to glue the spine down, but before I do that, I'm going to make the marks for my binding for the pages. So I want to do a 5-hole pamphlet stitch for this. So I'm just gonna kind of wing it. I'm not really even gonna make a template. What I am gonna do is I'm gonna mark the middle, and then I'm going to, since this is, well, I'm going to mark a 1/2 inch down from either side. And then I'm going to split the difference between this, which is 2 inches. So, because from here to here is 4 inches. So I'm going to do 2 inches as my separator here. So there's these are where my 5 holes are going to be. So then the next thing I'm going to do is at each one of these lines, I'm just going to come in, because I'm going to do 2 signatures. So I'm going to come in 3/16 of an inch and make a little mark for my dot. And same thing on the other side. I'm going to come in 3/16. And so that gives me some leeway at the edge, and then also they're spread apart enough. Now remember, we cut this spine a little smaller than 3/4 of an inch. So I'm actually measuring from each side. I'm not going over another 3 inches. So I am putting my ruler, I'm lining up this side to do my 3/16. So I'll put a dot there, but then I'm going to line up another tick mark on this side to measure in from the other side, since I know it's a little bit smaller to do my 3/16. So I'm just going up, and since this spine is nice and small, it's kind of easy to do this and still have it be lined up and everything where you want it. So, and then the next thing that I'll do, just to make sure, no, I think we're good. I think that looks good here. Okay. So these are ready to go. So now I do want to go ahead and glue this down before I punch my holes, because then I know that my holes will go through the spine as well. So let's go ahead and glue this down. And I just want to be sure I get it right in between my folds. And I'm just going to hold it a minute until it tacks. And while that's going, I will show you, I did set my snap on here. So I have a snap so that I can snap this shut. I didn't do a tutorial on that. If you would like to see a tutorial on setting a snap as a closure, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see if I can do one of those for you. The other thing I'm going to do before I put my papers in is I'm going to put down this piece of, another piece of the box, a chipboard there, because I do want to reinforce this side since it does have that snap on it. So I'm just going to put this down to make sure the front has a nice sturdy flap there. Okay, now I'm going to put my inside cover paper on. So I'm going to cut this down to be just a little bit smaller than the inside cover. So I'm just going to make marks because that's the way I like to do it. And then we'll do the other side as well. And I'm doing them separately because I may not have gotten them completely straight on either side. So, and before I put these down, I am going to do a little distressing on them since I cut them a bit. So let me go ahead and measure this one. And get my scissors out of the way. Okay. I'm just going to mark that so I don't forget what goes where. And I'm just going to distress these a bit. Okay, let's go ahead and glue these down. And actually, before I do that, I am just going to distress these edges a little in here. So that if that orange shows, it'll kind of not stick out too bad. And for this one, I am just kind of running a little bit of a bead around the outside of this because I want to make sure we get it nice and covered. Because of that silly stamp or snap, you kind of have to make sure you press from both sides to get everything down here. So I'm going to kind of make sure it's set in place, and then I'm going to turn it over and do another press on there to make sure we get it pressed down everywhere. Like this. Okay, and this still wants to pull up a little, but I think it will probably dry down when I give it a second, which I am going to do. I'm going to let this dry. Okay, everything's nice and dry on here. I'm going to go ahead and punch my holes in the spine. And I am going to use this Making Memories tool that it's a little hole puncher. And it's probably going to be quite loud. So I'm going to speed this up, but I'm just going to go through and punch all my holes in the spine here. got my holes punched, and I did have to take my paper piercer and just kind of finish them off a little bit. So through each hole, after I used my little punch tool, I went back through and just kind of made sure the holes were coming all the way through my cover. So now we are good to go, and I have my signatures ready. I'm just doing 2 signatures. These signatures only have 5 pages folded in half. So they measure 8.5 tall and 10 inches wide, so that when I fold them in half, I have a 5-inch page. Now for a challenge book, you really only need 8 pages in your entire book, because as you fold over 8 pages, you actually have 32 different pages. So if you're doing a monthly challenge, you only need that many. But I thought this might be nice to, you know, give myself a full spread for some of the days if I wanted to do that. So that's kind of why I put a couple of extra pages in there. So to put my signatures in, I did go ahead and make a little template from my holes, so I knew where to punch my holes in the signatures themselves. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure all my papers are lined up where I want them, and give them a little clip so that they stay in place for me. And then I'll put my template on the inside here and poke those holes with my paper piercer. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, holes are all punched. These are all ready to go. I'm going to use this brown nylon thread to thread it. And I have my bookbinding needle, and I have some wax that I like to wax up this thread with a little bit before I do that. And I'm going to go ahead and just sew the signatures right in. So I think that I even have a couple of tutorials on how to do the 5 pamphlet stitch. So I'm not going to show that here to try and keep this video as short as possible. So I'll be right back and we'll get these stitched right in. Okay, my signatures are all sewn in. You can see I sewed them through the spine here. And I'll just do a quick flip through. I have, like I said, 5 pages plus a little envelope or a time card in each one of my signatures. I left my knot on the inside and just cut my threads down there. So there is signature number 1. And here is the other signature. And I left it very plain for now, but I probably will go in and add some tuck spots and some pockets just so I have some places to put some things as we go through the challenge. But right now, this is it for this tutorial. And I have my snap that keeps my book closed. So I am all ready to start Junk Journal July. I hope that you like this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did. Subscribe to my channel if you're not. And hey, if you try one of these, I'd love to see what you did. You can tag me on Instagram at @madpapercrush, and I hope to see what you've created there. Thanks a lot, guys. See you next time. Bye-bye.